Hi everybody, that's the baseball head, the amazing, spectacular, terrific, the great one, the people's champion, your host, the Hut, and of course, welcome back to the Baseball Hub. We talk about the New York Mets here. So if you're a big Met fan, you want to follow my channel, I will tell you what I think. You may not like it, but we do have a lot of fun here, to be honest with you. But we got some news here, I'm sure you know about it, and that is the Mets have called up, finally called up Ronny Mauricio, their top shortstop prospect, and infielder and outfielder, and been waiting a long time to see him play. He's going to play. I would think he's going to play on Friday night against the Mariners, and hopefully we get a good chance to see what he can bring. You know, it's been a long time. I mean, the Mets really were very patient with him. I know we weren't all patient for it. I know we were all tired of watching some of these older guys and some of these veterans sort of, drag themselves. In particular, that how's Daniel Vogelback still here? I couldn't tell you. Well, I know one thing: he's got zero value. Nobody picked him up. But there was really no reason for Vogelback to be here when you had Mauricio down in AAA, and he's got probably bigger power than Vogelback can produce. I mean, Vogelback is he's just a disaster. What did Bendigo call me the other day? A stiff? Well, thanks for joining the rest of us. It took him like 5 months to figure that one out. I figured that out in April that he was a stiff and he couldn't do anything. But so Ronny is going to be playing for the Mets. I don't know if he's going to start as they do this video. The Mets have not posted their lineup yet. I would expect that he'll probably be playing second base a lot. We'll see how he is as a second baseman. He made a lot of errors in the field just everywhere he played this past minor league season, but he has hit really well. He's got a lot with 23 home runs and over 70 RBIs. The projections for him in the majors is that he's a guy that is going to be kind of average as an offensive player. We will see. He will not be a guy that walks a lot. He's going to be a guy that's going to be very aggressive. His strikeout rate has come down in the minor leagues. I'm not going to get into all the percentages and get into the weeds with you in this video, but he does not walk a lot. He has a high strikeout rate. The comparison for him, now he's a switch hitter, but the comparison that people have put out there, talent evaluators, have said that the biggest comparison with him has been Alfonso Soriano. Now, if you remember, 20 years ago, he was one of the best players, in the major leagues. He was a guy that hit 40 home runs, 40 stolen bases, tremendous power for a very skinny guy. And he's a guy that played a long time for the Yankees. Got traded from the Yankees to the Rangers in the Alex Rodriguez trade. He played for a long time with the Nationals. Right after they moved from Montreal to Washington. So he was a guy that had a lot of power. He had almost 400 home runs, over 300 home runs. He had a lot of home runs. So that's kind of where people compare Mauricio. But like I said, he's a switch hitter. As you know, Soriano was a right-handed hitter with tremendous power. If they had the DH back then, Soriano would have been a DH. His career kind of where he started out second. He came up as a shortstop. They put him in second. They kind of realized, he's not really that good of a second baseman. So they moved him to the outfield and became an average outfielder. Now I don't know where Mauricio is in terms of his defense. We will learn very quickly. I'll have a pretty good idea for you to give you my opinion on it. Now, the Mets fired a whole bunch of talent evaluators in their front office, and I think we kind of realized that this team needs a whole overhaul. I know they've done some things. They brought in a lot of people from outside the organization, but again, I sort of mentioned this a few times. They really do need to get rid of all these Wilpon people in the front office, from the ushers to the people that sell tickets. Get rid of all. I mean, not to be mean. It's time to move on from all these people, because there's a reason why the Mets have not won in all those years. It had to be a reason. It's not just, as you know, the Wilpons are still skulking around, but just get rid of all these people that have worked for them in the past. That may be more loyal to the older owner than opposed, and they're just incompetent. Let's be honest. The Mets have been incompetently run for a long time, and Steve Cohen has been doing his best to get this team up and running in a good way. And obviously, this past year was a disaster. Hopefully, with these younger players coming in, with these younger players that they've traded for, we'll have a little more sustainability in terms of just being you don't want this up and down like we've had the last 3 years, really. In 21, we thought the Mets were going to be good. Then they had a couple of injuries, terrible injuries, to one to Jacob deGrom and to Francisco Lindor 2 years ago. Then they won 101 games last year, and now this year. They're probably going to lose 90 games. You can't, I mean, if you have a very strong farm system and strong player development ability and ability to sort of not only scout other teams' players, but scout your own players and be able to evaluate a lot of stuff and to do a better job with analytics, this team will be in much better shape, than it is right now. This is a situation that has to change. And I hate to be mean, you got to get rid of all these Wilpon people. They need to go. Hopefully they start to do more of that in the next 2-3 years. It's going to be tough, but you have to do it. A couple other things. There was a article by the Munchkin Ken Rosendahl saying that the Craig Counsell is going to be one of the most sought-after free agents in this offseason. As you know, he's a manager. He's managed the first-place Brewers. And he's saying that the Mets have a good chance of making him the new manager, especially if the Mets bring in David Stearns, who's one of their executives. He worked under Counsell for a few years, worked over him as his boss, and he had a pretty good idea of what kind of manager he was every day. And then I know that Buck did a great job the first year, not such a good job this year. He's an older guy. Maybe you move on from him. I know he has a contract, but it'll be interesting to see how when Stearns comes in here, how he evaluates this team. Now, obviously, they got rid of some of these people, like David Howard, who was hired by Cohen, but some of these other people that were hired by the Wilpons, maybe they just want to clean house. So when Stearns comes in here, he can evaluate who he wants in here, who he wants to keep, who he wants to get rid of. And obviously the manager is a person that needs to be evaluated off of this season. We also need the pitching coach to be evaluated. We also need the hitting situation evaluated, because you can't go from being so good last year and then from September of last year on to this year, we've had a complete total disaster in terms of the consistency of this offense. In particular, Jeff McNeil. I would say that McNeil, in my opinion, he's probably put a lot of pressure on himself because he's got that new contract, and he's got 4 more years on the contract. But what we're just generally talking about is just the future of this team, just in terms of how they are able to sustain successful years back to back to back to back. You want a 5 to 10 year run where you're excellent. The Mets haven't had that since the 80s. Because they were able to produce these young players from 1984, really through 1988, brought in these young players to help this team along, help this franchise along. They need to start doing that again. They really haven't done that in a very long time. Now, Mauricio's part of, I guess they call him the Baby Mets. He's one of the members now. He's the final member. As you know as well, Brett Beatty's been brought back up. Hopefully he shows some kind of pulse in the field. Going into the offseason, I would not expect that he will be given the job going into next year. The Mets should think about looking for a third baseman and see where that goes, because I don't think you can give it to Beatty at this point. If Beatty had played well, no problem, you move on. He's the third baseman. But because he played so poorly, and he's come back, having played really well in AAA for the last few weeks, but you can't assume that he's gonna improve. You're not going to assume that he's going to be able to take the reins of this and take this job at third base and run with it. He has not proven so far that he can do it. So until then, the Mets should consider bringing in a veteran third baseman. Who that is? Would you bring in Matt Chapman? I am not a big fan of him offensively. Mets need another hitter in this lineup that can be a strong 5-hitter for Pete Alonso and Francisco Lindor. He might not be good enough offensively. Defensively, he's great. Probably the best defensive third baseman in the American League. But you can't go into that next year thinking that he's going to be, that Brett Beatty in particular is going to be the everyday third baseman. We know who the catcher is going to be. I would also mention that's Francisco Alvarez. He's kind of gotten tired as the season's worn on. Hopefully he'll be a little bit better next year with that. I expect big things from him. Keep an eye on the young player catcher Kevin Parada, who is now in Double-A. Maybe in the near future, Mets could have some kind of playing situation where the Braves have it. We have two strong catchers offensively and somewhat defensively. The defense for Parada is a little weak. It's not as good as Alvarez's, obviously. So the Mets are going to have to be smart about where they play Parada, and they can keep them both fresh. Do very much what the Braves have done. Luis Angel Acuna, as you know, is the big player, the big prospect that they brought in through all the trades for Max Scherzer. After a very slow start in Double-A, he's picked it up. Drew Gilbert has played great since the Mets brought him in. He's played great in Double-A. These are kind of some of the names, just the everyday players that we're going to be talking a lot about in spring training next year. And it's great to see that they're bringing in some younger guys. They need to get younger. I think that's been an obvious thing from really since last year, that they needed to get younger. That's also a big reason why this team did not gel this year. I think the age of this team hampered it. And why it's important to be able to supplement aging players with young players and vice versa. It keeps the older players fresh, and invigorates them too to have these younger guys here. But we'll see. And also can't forget about Mark Vandals, the other member of the Baby Mets. His offense, he needs a little more time. I mean, you need to see him play every day. It's too bad he had that wrist injury. I want to see him play for the next month, for the last month of the season. Just play him and that's it. Either third, first, DH. I want to be done with Vogelback. Wash my hands of him. If I don't have to ever see him again, I'd be a very happy camper, I'll tell you that. Well, let me know what you think about this video. And, of course, please subscribe to the Baseball Hut. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.